Today we are discussing environmental science, the human dependency on the environment and how we actually hurt all of the things that we need. To start off with, let's look at some global connections. Basically, how every part of the world is connected. The fact that we as North America cannot just be isolated. So a major example of this looks at convection currents, which you have probably heard about in physics and sometimes in chemistry. Convection currents are all over the entire world, and it is how the winds are created by the heating and cooling of the air. The major example that we're going to look at are the east to west winds between the Americas and Australia. So on a normal day, the winds move from the east to the west towards Australia. The movement of the winds also moves the water that way and creates the water currents. The water currents moving towards Australia creates an empty water area off the coast of South America that allows the cool water underneath to come up onto the coast, and that creates the cool water off of the coast of South America as shown in the picture. The cool water is very, very important for South America because it brings lots of nutrients. These nutrients support the plankton, which are the unicellular organisms that live in the water. The plankton supports the amount of fish that live off of South America. So without the plankton, there's no fish. Without fish, there is very little for South America to do because South America relies on their fishing for living. So a lot of their economy falls when there's no cool water and no east to west wind. El Nino, which is something you might have heard about before, is when the east to west winds don't form over the Pacific. So therefore, the South American coast has warm water and therefore no fish. So that really hurts that area. So as you see on this map, it's also not just South America that is affected. It is everywhere in the world that is hugely affected. We actually get a lot more rainfall during El Nino years, which helps us because we get a lot more farming done when there's more rain. So now how humans actually play into this is the fact that we actually need nature. Ecosystems modify climate, they prevent erosion and build soil for us. They also break down our waste, and they store carbon and maintain the carbon cycle, if you remember from our nutrient cycle logs. We do need the ecosystem. We also hurt the ecosystems through these major aspects. So the fact that human population is hugely increasing, that we create acid rain through various types of chemical pollution, that we're depleting our ozone, and increasing carbon dioxide, which all together cause global warming. So the other day you looked at solutions to this, and now we're going to look at these in a little more detail. So if you look at how fast we are growing at a rate of 80 million people per year, which is a lot. So if you look at the year 2000 and then 2050, you can see the population is growing leaps and bounds, taking over many different places in the world, which means that other species really have nowhere to go. So we have 22% are used exclusively by humans. If we keep on taking over more and more, other species really have no place to go. So therefore, we are losing species, and we are losing species about 3 species per hour, which is creating a big biodiversity crisis because this is a huge mass extinction. Animals are becoming extinct way too quickly or threatened. And the reason for this is we are not using our resources on a sustainable basis. Sustainable basis means you don't use them too much, so you don't kill the resource and you don't lose the entire resource. Instead, you take a little at a time, allowing it to also flourish as you're using it. Another way that we're creating mass extinction is destroying habitats because we are taking over their land areas. We're destroying rainforests and farmlands and urban areas that we're building on that used to be their forests to live in. We're also creating habitat fragmentation by building roads through their habitats because when there's a road there, they have to cross the road, and then there's the possibility of them getting hit by a car and dying. So the next issue is chemical pollution. There's a few different types of chemical pollution. Oil spills are pretty basic, the fact that they do destroy so many of those species there. There's also agricultural chemicals. There was a pesticide known as DDT that was huge before, and the problem with DDT is it would be sprayed onto the plants, and then it would go into the soil when it rained, and then it would eventually end up in the ocean, and it would end up in the fish, which it wouldn't kill the fish, but what happened was then the birds that would eat the fish, as seen in the picture, would increase concentration of DDT inside of them because they're eating a whole bunch of fish that just have a little each. So it increases in concentration as you go up the food chain, which is known as biological magnification. This DDT causes fragile eggs for birds, so therefore the birds wouldn't be able to actually reproduce. And this was a major problem for the bald eagle, and that's why the bald eagle became a threatened and endangered species, because they lay 2 eggs a year, and the chances of those fragile eggs breaking before the birds actually hatched was large when they had DDT inside of them. Another chemical pollution cause is acid rain, because when you burn coal, it produces sulfur and then the sulfuric acid in our rains, which hurts our lakes and forests and fungi and even our statues, as seen by the picture. But these change in pH of the soil and the water in a system is extremely detrimental to the organisms living there. The next problem was our declining ozone. O3, or ozone, that creates the ozone, is naturally occurring, but chlorofluorocarbons destroy the ozone. Chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, are in aerosol cans and all of those types of products, and we used to use them a lot more, and they were destroying the ozone at a very fast rate, so we weren't able to create enough ozone to take for that ozone that was being depleted. Luckily, there's a law that you're not allowed to create CFCs anymore, so the almost stopped destroying our ozone layer, but we still have the problem with an ozone hole. The next problem is increasing carbon dioxide. The estimation is by the year 2100, the concentration of CO2 will be twice that it was in 1850. The increase in CO2 corresponds to an increase in temperature because the CO2 traps the heat, and therefore with an increased temperature we are also destroying habitats. Notice how they're all related. Now this increase in temperature will increase sea levels and not only destroy the polar bear's habitat but also our habitats, because with the increase in sea level the land's getting fewer and fewer, and this is going to become a huge problem. Now here are the steps to prevent all of those problems from really impacting our environments. So you want to assess the problem, take a risk analysis on consequences of interventions, educate the public so that they actually take part in the fixing. Then also you have to go through the elected officials, because this usually becomes a law, and then you want to make sure you monitor. But in general, what you really want to do is decide whether you need to conserve an area or restore an area. Conservation, you basically identify and maintain the natural area. So the upper picture of this, that is a land area that is conserved, and we are able to go on there, but there are very strict rules as to what humans can bring in and out of an area like that. Restoration is when you're trying to reverse your problem. So for example, when we destroy our building, are we going to convert the school site back to a grassland? When you do go about restoring an area, you have to make sure that you bring in the proper species in order to create those interactions that were once there. So it does take a lot of research in order to completely restore an area back to its original. These are just a few examples that have occurred over the past couple of years. Restoring the Everglades in Florida, reintroducing the gray wolf to Yellowstone, conserving the migratory paths of birds up the East Coast, and then the Charles River Boston Harbor restoration that we have discussed before. So you can look at these and research them if you would like, but these are major examples of different ways that we have fixed how we have injured various ecosystems.